Okay, hello, good afternoon for those of you who are watching from Europe, and I don't know, good morning, good evening, good day in general. Welcome to the second day of the virtual marathon. Welcome to, well, my session. It will be totally about the UI flows, and actually I'll try as well to cover the new addition to Microsoft RPA that is called WinAutomation, if I have time. Anyway, it is on slides, so hopefully I will be able to cover the whole Microsoft RPA landscape, so stay tuned. Okay, before I continue, mark the new dates for Sharepoint Conference. It will be held next year, hopefully in person. Yep. Oops, sorry. Yeah, this one. Also, great applause, big applause to our sponsors, without whom even this online event wouldn't be able to take place, because still, even though we are doing this virtually, it still needs and requires some costs to be covered. So thank you very much, our dear sponsors. And a few words about me. My name is Tomasz Poszytek. I'm coming from Warsaw in Poland. I am Business Applications MVP, and this is something new because I was awarded last year, but before then I'm still working with Microsoft products for a very long time, for like 10 years, and with a Power Platform for nearly 4, I mean, maybe even over 4. Nevertheless, RPA is something new. I started working with RPA last year, and that wasn't actually Microsoft RPA, but Linux RPA. Nevertheless, these tools are fairly similar, so the adoption of every new one is quite fast. And yeah, I think that's all about me that I want actually to say. If you haven't yet taken part in the raffle, in answering the questions, in visiting sponsors booths, then please do so. There are 3 how is it called? Oculus 2v1. I heard very good words about that device, so maybe it's worth of watching the next conference in virtual reality. And also, if you do have spare money, if you do want to support charity organizations, then there are a couple of that are cooperating, or that the conference organizers are cooperating with. So simply visit the URLs here. You're now presented, and donate as much as you can. Sorry, these slides shouldn't be here. Yeah. So anyway, this slide shouldn't be here. If you have any questions, post them in the Q&A chat. I will be trying to see it, because I'm just sharing only one screen, because then RPA is not working properly. And therefore, if there are any questions, like here, no questions, I will be just switching. So I will read them if no one from the producers team is able to read them for me. Okay, anyway, what is RPA? RPA basically stands for Robotic Process Automation. This is the term that is used to describe all the tools that are available on the market, which are dedicated to automate processes which usually are done by us, humans. The processes that are repeatable, that are boring, that are similar every time they are run, and that usually doesn't require a lot of knowledge and sophisticated AI. This year, RPA, I mean, it was last year, RPA as a term hit the 3rd, the most commonly searched term on Gartner.com. And this market that we have, even though for a couple of years now, we have still the same leaders. So what is it? The UiPath, Automation Anywhere, and Blue Prism. This is the Forrester Wave from, where was it? Yeah, from Q4 2019, so quite new. Nevertheless, this market is still growing, because companies are still acknowledging or getting or realizing that they have a lot of those processes that are actually being done by human employees, and actually they can be automated, and those employees can be transitioned to more demanding, more advanced scenarios, more advanced tasks. And this market is really huge. It's over $4 billion by 2023. Just 2 years. And number of competitors is still growing. Like, as I said, Nintex RPA, for example, that was acquisition that was done 2018. And last year it was just rolling out. An acquisition by Microsoft on WinAutomation. I mean, the software motive, the company behind the WinAutomation, was done somewhere this year. It was announced just around the build. So there are movements, there are new companies starting up, there are old companies being closed, but still this market is huge. Okay, the Power Platform as we know it today is giving us tools, is giving us the landscape to actually automate any kind of process, any kind of application, or create any kind of business application that we want. So we have Power BI to visualize, to present data. We have Power Apps to create applications, to create mobile applications, forms. We have Power Automate to build dynamic processes, to build business processes. And finally, we have Power Virtual Agents that allows us to build conversational, or the chatbots, as they are called. Below this level of applications, we know we have the same environment. So we have connectors, we have AI Builder, we have Common Data Service, which serve as a database for all these tools. And there is one thing that is in common around all these applications, all these solutions, is that we can actually, us as power users, as citizen developers, we can actually use them without actually a knowledge of how to code. What is also significant today, we have over 300 app connectors in Power Platform. I think it's 340 something already. These are not only connectors to Office 365 services and Azure services, and I mean, anything that is inside Office or Microsoft environment. This is also a huge number of connectors to third-party applications and vendors. Some of them are premium, true. Some of them are not. Still, the number of endpoints of tools we can connect into our process, into our applications, is really huge and significant. And last year, during Microsoft Ignite, Satya announced a new tool in that landscape. I mean, sort of extension to the Power Automate, called UI Flows. So the tool to actually automate legacy applications. The point for that, I mean, the reason for that is that we have all these applications around Power Automate, or these endpoints around Power Automate we can use, that helps us to both automate documents, even if these are just images, and automate online applications or any other software that has its REST APIs or SOAP APIs or any other kind of APIs that Power Automate can consume, either by custom connector or simply by calling HTTP requests. But we did not have anything in that landscape, in that ecosystem, that actually helped us to automate applications, websites, and whatever else there is on the computer area that did not have any kind of endpoints. REST endpoints, web endpoints, they were just able to be consumed by the user, by the human user, via the user interface. So when speaking about the UI flows, we can actually call this technology called of a bridge, because it helps us now to cover or to complete this integration between the old legacy applications, either desktop and web, that did not have, as I said, any other kind of an API or interface apart from the user interface, with the modern systems, with the Power Automate processes, with the Power Apps, so that actually we can include that software that we thought we will never ever be able to somehow include in our processes back to this modern world. So this number of applications that every company has I think is quite numerous and is significant. And it's not only about the SAP. Well, with SAP, we have the SAP HANA, so we can, through the HANA and the cloud, actually call the SAP data. But I bet there are a number of like old systems that are still being used because company just got used to them and they are still working. So there is actually no point in changing them to the newer version or even replacing them with something more modern. And therefore they are still there, they are still running, but they are somehow producing costs because they can only be supported or used by the human employees. So this is something that we want to cover with UI flows. Now, when we want to create a new UI flow, today we have to choose between the UI flow for desktop and the UI flow for a web. This is because the UI flow as a tool doesn't have a unified interface for automation, both the desktop applications and web applications. And so what are the requirements actually to start playing with the UI flows? Well, first, we need to have paid or trial Power Automate plan because UI flows won't actually be triggered without a Power Automate. We also need to have the paid or trial plan for the RPA. I'll talk about the licensing in the end. Then we need to have the work or school account to sign into the Windows device that we want to run the UI flows, and that account need to have the administrator privileges on that account. Also, the UI flows only works on the Windows 10 Pro or higher, like Enterprise, and Windows Server 2016 or higher. We need to use Microsoft Edge Chromium or Google Chrome. Also, we need to use Power Platform environment that do have the Common Data Service installed because all the information that UI flows is using to first be configured and then to run is stored in the Common Data Service. And lastly, well, we of course need to have the keyboard and mouse. Preferably, the environment where we are going to build, I mean, not preferably, one of the requirements as well is that the environment, the computer, the machine where we set up the UI flow should be the same where it is run, because the first action in UI flows, I'll just show you later, that register what application, for example, should be opened, also stores information about the keyboard, kind of the keyboard layout. And so then when we try to trigger the same UI flow on a machine that has a different keyboard layout, it can fail. Okay, so what are also the prerequisites that we need to cover, we need to follow to actually start with the UI flows? First, we need to install the UI flow web browser extension. And this UI flows browser extension is installed for, it's for web-based UI flows, not for desktop-based UI flows. So anyway, we need to install uiflows.exe, so the installer downloaded from the Microsoft documentation site. And once we install UI flows on our computer, it will install both the UI flows steps recorder and player, and the UI flows web browser extension. Now, the web browser extension just automatically installs or adds to every Chromium run or engined browser, so either Edge and Chrome, but then we have to activate it. Then we need to as well download and install and configure on-premises data gateway. It is very, very important. I mean, it's crucial that the on-premises data gateway and the service in Azure that we're gonna to use to run the gateway and the environment region that we use to run UI flows, all these things have to be in the same region, because either way they will not be able to talk to each other. And lastly, we also need to download and install. Sorry, I was right. Yeah, that was for desktop. And lastly, we need to download and install Selenium web browser extension. This is the extension we need to use if we want to automate as well the web-based UI flows. Cool. All right. So now I wanted to go and show you a demo of the UI flows for desktop. Let me show if there are any questions. No. Cool. Okay. So as you saw, when I want to start playing or trying using the UI flows, first I need to go to My Flows or go to Create, or I mean, in either of the ways that you're today able to start creating your flow, there is also a shortcut to start creating the UI flow. So I will start with the UI flow with the desktop one. Now, what I want to automate is this Contoso invoicing application. It is a very easy and very old application, but it's still being used by the company to store information about the invoices. And what I want to store are for information, the account, the contact, the amount, and the status of the invoice. Plus, I want to record the ID of the newly created record. Okay. So I need to now define 4 values for inputs. Note that there is already the new kind of an input. It's called the sensitive text. It wasn't available since this week, I guess. And it allows you to actually input a sensitive data, which will be marked with those dots or with stars. And also UI flows won't pass it to the legacy application in the plain text. So even when it runs, user won't be able to preview what is actually being sent. So for example, instead of using Azure Key Vault to pass those credentials, you can use this kind of an approach. Okay. Next. Fair enough. The next step I need to do is to launch the recorder and simply start recording my steps. So UI flows is really perfect when talking about quite a simple, short automations, to be honest, because the longer automation you want to build, the more scenarios you want to cover or conditions, then the more complex it's starting to be, because in the steps here, you're actually not able to use any other kind of an action apart from just recorder. So you need to create a logic in Power Automate and then create those automation steps as a separate UI flows, which is really then hard to maintain. Anyway, if I didn't have these Power Automate, also this UI flow extension installed here, then instead of launch recorder, I would see a button to download the UI flows and install. But now I want to start. So note here now at the bottom, here, there is this UI flows recorder. So what I want to do now is to start recording, open the Contoso app. And once I'm hovering my mouse over the user interface of this application, you can see this blue border being shown. So it says, I mean, it means that the UI flows is actually able to identify this part of the user interface and then record its target information, its path. So then it will be able to precisely click in the same place. Now I want to use inputs. So automation of status can be done in a different way. I'll just choose this invoice. And lastly, I want to hit save. Then outputs to get the text. Right. And then simply close this up and done. Okay, once I'm back now here in my UI flows designer, I can see that all the steps I actually did are recorded. So the thing I mentioned about keyboard, there is this keyboard layout that is important. Also in each action, because UI flows is also recording the delays I am doing. So because I was talking between opening an application and then actually doing the first action, UI flows recorded that after I open this application, it should wait 10 seconds before it actually moves on to the next step. I don't want it to be that long. I'll just limit it to 1 second. Also, in the first action, there is a different setting that says how long should it wait after the previous action. So because I was again speaking too long, it is waiting 4 seconds, I'll set it to 0. And this way I can as well make the whole operation of the UI flows faster, because it actually doesn't need to wait that long between each of those inputs, of those works, of those steps. Now note as well that in each of these actions, there is the image that shows where actually the UI flows is trying to hit or to click or to do an action. If this is like the input text value, there is a place where I'm able to provide a value that should be inputted. And then there is this huge selector. So this is the information that UI flows actually read from the UI of the application. And based on this XPath, then it's going to be able to actually detect where should it click again. Now, I told you that I want as well to automate the status. So this is the status, I think. Here, yes, it says invoiced. But because there is no way to dynamically select the label from the interface, oh, come on, again, 4 seconds. We're gonna wait until ever before it's actually executed. So before this invoice cannot be dynamically selected, but I can go into selector and see, okay, so now it says it's going to select an item, an option in the drop-down from the invoice details that says invoiced. So I simply need to replace this invoice label with my status here and there. And this way I can actually make this selection dynamic as well. Now, the next thing I want to do is actually remove this closure done this way and actually replace it with a dedicated action that is called the close application. Note that apart from the actions that I've already used by clicking on the interface, there is a couple of more. So I can get the information about whether the item, the element is enabled or disabled. I can use the clear element. So if I have a field in my application that has a value from the start, but I want to replace it with a new value, then instead of double clicking on the field to highlight it and then hitting backspace multiple times, I might simply use this clear element and use it on a target element so that it will be just wiped out and ready for the new value. There's also right click, left click, and replay keystrokes. So if I would be typing something on the keyboard in the application, then simply this action would be used, and then I will see the list of buttons, of keystrokes that I've used. All right. So let's try now and test it. Now this is just an action that is being played locally. So this activity that you can see right now is not being played through the on-premises data gateway. It is just executed locally on my machine. Well, it seems it's working fine. So, okay, there is, I guess, there are 4 seconds delay and invoiced. All right, and it's closed. Oh, but it should be paid. So maybe there was something set differently that I wanted, or there is maybe one more label that I just omitted. Yeah, but it should be working actually, following this pattern. Okay, let me just leave it for now. Oh, it actually failed. Just one last thing. Where did it click? Let me move it here. Okay, so now I can save it. And let me go back to the presentation, because the next thing I want to actually show you Well, is the browser UI flows. So right now I'll just jump onto the next demo. So now I will just create a browser UI flow or the web UI flow. And this time I want simply to call the Bing conversion API, or maybe not conversion API, because if that was an API, I would be able to consume it directly from Power Automate. But I want to call the Bing search to convert the currency from, let's say, Polish zloty to USD. So let me call this convert currency. Income. And now once I hit the launch recorder, you can see that there is a Selenium IDE launched. So once I hit the start recording, it is opening in the browser. Let me just expand it a bit. And now I want to use conversion of like 1000 PLN to USD because actually this Contoso invoicing application is expecting USD dollars. So let me just go back. You can see that all these steps I've been doing are here registered. So where I clicked, what I typed, what I entered, what I hit. So next thing I want to do is to get that outcome. So I want to use a store. Here I can store value. Here I can target the place from which I want to store this value. So now you can see as well that this Selenium IDE also has this kind of functionality that highlights the part of DOM element that is able to detect. Record clicked. So it detected that this field has this ID, and I need to use now the value because the value is going to be then used as the output variable. I'll call it converted amount. And last thing is I'm also going to say close. All right. So let me now check if this is working fine. Yep, close application. Sorry. And stop recording. So let's see if this is working. Ouch. We don't need this step, that step, and this one is not needed either. Okay. Fine. Test completed successfully. So the last thing I want to do is replace this 1000 because now it's like a fixed value with an input variable. So I will say PLN amount. So this way, by using the curly bracket and this $sign symbol, I'm actually able to create an input variable, and this is going to be the output variable. This is not very consistent, but this is how it works. Fine. So the last thing I want to do is to create a very short, very small flow that is going to actually execute the whole scenario. It's going to be triggered manually. So let me just create 4 inputs. Count, contact, amount, bodies, and lastly, let's say status, but this is not going to be a plain text, but this drop down of options. So uninvoiced Next step is going to be to call UI flows, the web UI flows, to convert the amount from PLN to USD. Now here I need to select the UI flow. Now you can see that the input variable here is already selected. Let me play it in Chromium. And also I need to choose what is the run mode, whether it's unattended or attended. I'll talk about it later, just in a moment, because we're just finishing this demo. Now the UI flow second for the desktop. It was register invoice. Here I also have to select whether attended or unattended. And let's fill it with the information. The amount now here is as well available as a converted amount, so the outcome variable from the previous UI flow. And lastly, the status. All right, before I hit it to run, let me check if there are any questions. No. Okay. So let's play it and see if it's working. Galen, I'm gonna use you as my account. Okay, at company.com. For example, I don't know, 4,000. And let's choose this page. Let's gonna see if this is working, or maybe I did a mistake somewhere in the configuration of this action. And now I'm gonna hit to run. I have my hands here, so you can see that just in a moment, via the on-premises data gateway, UI flow or the Power Automate is going to call the Selenium, the recorded Selenium steps. So now it is just playing what we recorded in the previous couple of minutes. Okay, 4,000, fine. So now it grabbed the outcome value, and now it should call again the on-premises data gateway to start the desktop UI flow, to open the Contoso invoicing application, and to create actually the new record and store its ID. And that should start right now. Fine, cool. I still keep my fingers crossed very, very hard, because sometimes it just doesn't work. Okay, looks like everything here works fine. Now the amount is going to be the converted amount from the first UI flow, cool. And the status. Okay, there is something I misconfigured. Saved. And close. Okay. Might be that, oh, no, it worked, fine. So let me just preview if actually this outcome was taken. All right. And the output's cool. The output was registered, so the record ID has been recorded properly. So the whole scenario worked fine. So this way we can actually try to automate two systems, web and a desktop. And as I said, if you have more like complex scenario where you need to check something, do in a loop, do multiple branches or conditions, then you need to create all this logic in Power Automate and then simply use UI flows as an actions in that logic. So it really makes all these creation of a complex RPA processes quite difficult and as well complex using the UI flows approach. Okay, I still have 10 minutes, so cool. Okay. What is the difference between the RPA attended and unattended? Well, actually, the attended basically is the way that we as humans are working. So attended is actually simulating just a sitting here at the desk human agent that is clicking on the interface, that has to be logged in, that is doing well, just this one task at a moment, because there is just one user that could do that. On the other hand, the unattended scenario is kind of an enterprise approach, because you don't have to log in. I mean, you have to even log out from the machine, because the bot is working in the back. There cannot be any active user session, and you can simply extend number of unattended bots to how many you want, because it's only a matter of the money. And then you have one controller, so you have like a gateway cluster, that the first computer added to this gateway, to this cluster, is a controller, and then every other computer that, when you were configuring the on-premises data gateway, you selected to add it to an existing cluster, not to add it not to create a separate instance of the gateway, then they will all work in this cluster, in this network, and this first machine is just going to orchestrate the payload, the workload, actually, the workload, and it will be spreading these to all available and free bots in that cluster. So you can just extend it endlessly, as much money as you have. And so speaking about the money, speaking about the licensing, when talking about the attended mode, what is required is to have the per user or per flow plan to have this Power Automate run, because UI Flows is a premium license. And then you also need to have the per user plan with attended RPA, so it's $40. Now, speaking about the unattended scenario, you need to pay $150 per bot, and then you as well need to buy this per flow plan or per user plan to use the Power Automates. What is important in terms of talking about the bots and licensing here in Microsoft is that when speaking about a bot, Microsoft is pointing to a single machine. So actually you can have multiple UI Flows processes. You can have hundreds of them, but because you can only run one at a time on the single machine, therefore you are paying for this specific machine. And so in a scenario that you have a complex UI Flows scenario, and you have a Power Automate that has a lot of those UI Flows actions, and it is just calling it along with its logic. Therefore, no matter how many of those UI Flows execution it's gonna do, but they will be all done in the same on the same machine, and therefore you are paying only for this one machine. The same with unattended. You can have multiple UI Flows created that you want to run across the cluster, but because you can only run one UI Flow at a time, you are paying for the single machine. Okay, questions? God, I'm sorry. Okay. All right. Anyway, that's not it. That's not all. As I said in the beginning, Microsoft has announced just like a week ago, or a week and a half, no, it was a week ago, that they have acquired a company called Softomotive, the maker behind the WinAutomation. So the WinAutomation is quite an advanced tool, very matured tool that is a desktop installed. And this is application that helps you to build a very complex RPA scenarios, because it does have all the logic. It has a lot of actions that helps you to automate, connect to a variety of the third-party tools and applications. It has loops, it has conditions, it has variables, it has functions. It can call REST APIs. It can call, I mean, lots of things, right? And thanks to that, if you have a very, very complex scenario with the RPA, then instead of just producing hundreds of those small chunks in UI Flows, you can actually use UI Flow to call WinAutomation, pass the parameters, and then maybe grab back the outcome from this WinAutomation run, or maybe not, and simply do all these sophisticated complex logic inside the WinAutomation tool. Just to finish with, to run the WinAutomation, to run WinAutomation, let me just jump back then to the demo. To run WinAutomation, user has to be given either the attended RPA plan. No, there is no either. So user has to be granted the attended RPA plan, premium, or sorry, paid or trial, and obviously the per user plan for the flow, for the Power Automate. So having that said, let me jump back to the WinAutomation. The WinAutomation as a tool is built out of two components. So the first one is this this WinAutomation console, where you have a list of all the processes you have created, where you have a definition of triggers, a scheduler, information about the logs, and also the configuration of the application, the keys, the passwords, authentication, attention, or maybe approach for user, for error handling, and all the things that you can like configure on the machine level. WinAutomation is working on this particular machine. You can install it, once you install it, you have also to select what kind of license you want to use, either Power Automate license or WinAutomation license if you have bought it before. Wow. Now, in the processes tab, you have a list of all the processes split across the folders you can create, so that this helps you to organize a lot of the processes you can build. And also, once you install it, it starts with this list of examples. So even if you don't have any idea how to use this tool, simply by going through these examples, you can really acknowledge a lot of actions, a lot of best practices, and how to use it from the very basics to the very advanced scenarios. Now, what I did, I have created this Contoso recorder solution. Now, how does it actually work? How this integration between the Power Automate, the UI flows, and the WinAutomation works? Microsoft encourages us or recommends that the parameters, the input parameters, should be passed by the command line. So the UI flows should simply trigger command line prompt, and then using the command line command, it should actually trigger the WinAutomation process. And using this command line, it can as well pass the parameters. So this is the process that is actually used as well for creating and storing this record in Contoso invoicing. And what it does is simply getting those parameters from the input from the command line, and then is opening the application, is clicking those elements in the UI. It has a lot of those controls here defined. So as well here controls, I cannot make it bigger, but you have to trust me that controls here as well have those images that shows where it is actually clicking on the interface. And then it is again mimicking the activities I'm doing. And here you can as well record either desktop application using the desktop recorder, the Mac recorder, or you can do the web recorder. What I didn't mention is that once you install the WinAutomation, it also asks you what browsers you'd like to automate. And so it installs add-ins for Microsoft Edge Chromium, Google Chrome, and Firefox. So you can use either of those three browsers to automate your web processes. However, you do this from this single interface, so you don't have to navigate between two systems like with UI flows between Selenium and the desktop recorder. Now here on the left, you can see a list of actions, a list of all the commands that actually WinAutomation is able to do. In the flow control and in the conditionals and in the loops, you have all these actions that you can actually use to create a logic that is not absolutely possible with UI flows today. And I guess because of that, it won't be possible in the nearest future. So with that, you can really create a lot of these things. You have also variables, so the information that are being used inside the flow, the logic, through the logic as an input, as an output, and functions, which is really cool because with functions you can create reusable parts of logic that you can call from different steps in your flow, in your process, and they simply are getting executed and output data to variables, for example. And if you have a repeatable set of actions in your flow and you want just to move them out to a like sub page, then this is the function. What is it used for? So it helps you to increase the readability because it limits number of actions that you see in your flow, but also creates those blocks that you can reuse from different steps in the logic. Plus, there is also a thing called region, which is kind of like a scope in Power Automate. So you can put actions inside those regions, and then it also helps you to make this whole flow easier to read. Lastly, if you want to pass the parameters back to UI flows or back to Power Automate, Microsoft says that you should display a prompt window. So this one with warning code with the error, and this message should actually display the information you want to send back. And that your Power Automate should wait and then call another UI flow that is reading this value back. Well, I think this kind of an approach is not that very much reliable because a lot of things can happen in between. So what I propose instead is to simply call the web service back. And now simply let me show you how it works. I should have this somewhere here. Maybe it's not that. So I have already this UI flow created for the desktop that triggers the WinAutomation. Trigger WinAutomation, cool. So I'll again use the contact. Let's say now the amount is going to be in PLN and the status. Or maybe you know what, I'll just put it here. And let's complete this flow here. Okay, so now once I trigger it again, first, again, it will call the UI flows for web to, well, in this scenario, to get this conversion of the amount. I could do this as well using the WinAutomation, but I didn't because I was lazy. But anyway, this is going to be executed very fast, so I hope this will fit in a time. And once this UI flow for web is done, then it will trigger the second UI flow that is going to, again, through on-premises data gateway, call command line on my computer and input the command to actually trigger the WinAutomation process. So yeah, I keep my fingers crossed for this to work. Yeah. Right. So either there is something wrong or oh, no, it's working. Cool. So now you'll see that this is there is going to be the command written in just a second. Okay, there it goes. Sorry for this drill. Now these are the parameters being passed to the WinAutomation process. Sorry for that. I did not expect anyone drilling in my office. And now this is, as you can see here in the bottom, so this has triggered the WinAutomation process, which is now as well mimicking the user behavior as it was recorded. So, okay, well, it failed because it didn't get the window. So at least I was able to show that the WinAutomation was triggered. Actually, I have no idea why it failed. It has an issue with selection of the entire desktop and then, yeah, storing this window instance. So that's something we can actually try to debug and work on. The best, the best thing about this is that in WinAutomation we have this advanced exception handling. So even if something really goes wrong, for example, we know that the selector can be changed. We can define this exception handling and, for example, say, okay, once it failed, run function, and this function is going to choose enter selector. So then you can retry, and so on and so on. So that's really cool. And this is a really, yeah, it's really powerful application and solution because it really helps us to build all these scenarios that we are not able to do using the UI flows. Okay, not. Sorry. Okay, dokie. So I hope you liked this session, and I hope you do have a lot of questions that you haven't had a chance to ask. If you do have questions, if you do want to, sorry. Why am I not able to control my computer? So if you have any kind of a feedback, if you want to share anything with the organizers, with me, please give us a feedback about the event. Please give me the feedback about the session. Plus, if you have any questions to me, if you want to interact, if you want to further talk about UI flows, about the session, about how to use the application, there is a set of ways that you can actually try to reach me out: email, Twitter. I encourage you to my Twitter. I have also a working demo of the WinAutomation on my YouTube channel, so if you want to watch it, how it works, navigate there. Thank you again. Thank you very much. And yeah, I wish you a pleasant rest of the conference.